Bordeaux with To Live For, and I have the great privilege and honor of having here with me today Laurie McCammon. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'm so excited to be with you and to share with our audience so many people who I think will be truly inspired and uplifted and freed by your message. You're welcome. I've read quite a lot of your book, and I have it quite a bit marked up because there's so many inspirational messages in your book, and it resonates so much with me, and I think it will with so many people for so many reasons. And I think when you can touch someone at that deep personal level, and I think you have just this amazing, what you've put together, amazing vehicle to help people transform their lives in positive, uplifting ways. Mm-hmm. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I talk about it in terms of a divine download that I received in 2013, and it came through. And what I mean by a divine download, it's one of those times when you just get a message about something that you know in your bones is right. Your whole body knows that it's telling you the truth. And what's happened to me in the past when I've gotten those, and I think we all do, we get those messages like turn down this road, not that road, or follow this path, not that path in your life. So we get them, but they're usually for us personally, at least for me. They were for me personally. And this was the first one that I received that really felt like it needed to be shared. And I think what was so powerful about it is that and I call it the enough message. The enough message is a very, very, very simple message about our relationship to this one single word, enough, and how we've got it backwards. And so when I got the message, the stark contrast was, well, wait a minute, what you're telling me really feels like truth to me, but it's the opposite of everything that we've been taught, like in our society. We've been taught to believe that there's scarcity and that we're not enough to make a difference and that there isn't enough for us and that we're in competition with everybody else because there isn't enough. So it created this sort of dissonance inside of me of, okay, well, this feels like truth, but this is what I've been taught. So how do I go about looking at or showing that this really is the truth? So, it first came as a spiritual message, but my background is in science. So my approach to the message was to look at various different lenses and kind of reconstruct or reverse engineer the enough message.
What is your background in science?
Well, I was in college, I was pre-med. So I really loved the scientific method, that's why I got involved with science. But the spirituality piece has grown in me ever since, back then in college. So I find that I'm kind of balanced, I think, within the two. And so I was sort of seeking to find, can the two sides of me basically come to an agreement about this? And it was really pretty startling what I found. Every lens that I chose to look at, whether it was systems theory or quantum physics or the cutting edge technologies that we have, or even if you want to look at archetypal psychology or the rising social movements that are happening all over the planet, and you look at the core of what's happening in all those realms, it all has to do with accessing enough in ways that are cutting edge. And they prove and they show that the world really is organized. The universe is organized around this idea of enough for everybody. In fact, that's what an ecosystem is, if you think about it. an ecosystem is a system that provides enough for everyone in the system, even though they're all different species and have different needs. And that's why it's sustainable forever. So if we look at our planet now and how humanity is interacting with our planet, we see that this scarcity mindset actually creates and perpetuates scarcity. It breaks all the rules about how you live in an ecosystem way that provides enough for everybody. So anyway, it's where I think our thinking and our programming for the past 5,000 years, it's been that long, that we've had this scarcity mindset.
So why do you believe that it came as a spiritual message in to you with all of the scientific background and an immense amount of research that you've done? And so how does that spiritual message tie into all of these scientific lenses that you are looking through?
Well, I think that for me, it really is about balancing left and right brain. That's how I think we can make transformation happen more quickly, collectively and individually, if the messages that we're working with satisfy all of those areas. And why I think it came to me is because I don't think I'm unique. I call it an acorn drop, like universal acorn drop. You know, like an oak tree will put out all these acorns, and only a few of them will sprout into trees. So I had noticed as soon as this word started to show up in my life, I started to notice it everywhere. I mean, so many people are talking about enough, whether it's enough is enough or I am enough. You find it everywhere, and you find it in every aspect of your own life, which is whether it's financial, relationships, your job, your parenting, all of these things. Your idea about enough and the way you orient towards that one word changes everything about what can happen in those realms. So
was at the very core of my being and my own self-image and my own self-esteem, that I had a mom that was very extremely critical, and growing up with that, and I just am a people pleaser. I wanted my mother to love me and approve of me, but I could never make her happy. I could never do enough to please her, and that ended up carrying a negative thought process and message throughout my life, that I've done a great work of self-work to transform that. And because that turns into your own self-judgment, and it's really truly a difference between true contentment and peace and self-judgment. And when people carry that inside, that not enough, then you risk projecting that out on others too, because all of our thoughts affect ourselves and each other. So how do you change those old patterns, those old records that we all get programmed? And when people feel that they're not enough, you know, I can have a list of 30 things and check off every single thing on the list. And the old record would say, you know, you still didn't do enough, and even though I fit 3 days into one. Seriously. And so, you know, we're all a work in progress.
Right.
But it's been really hard. So what words of wisdom do you have for me and everyone else in this predicament?
Well, I think the first revelation to have is to understand that you're not the only one. We have this tendency to, whatever it is we're dealing with, to think that we've got the problem's ours. You know, that it's my attitude, it's my belief system. I've got to change it, I've got to fix it. And so when I talk about what enough is, I often mention that it's not a self-help methodology. It's a paradigm shifting methodology, because we don't have a self-help problem. We have a paradigm-sized problem, which means that we've all received this programming that you're talking about. Some more harshly than others. Obviously, if you have a highly critical parent or role model in your life, especially growing up, but we've all been affected. See, I had the opposite. My mother told me I could do no wrong. I mean, she was a strict mother in some ways, but she was very, very loving and affirming all the time. So I didn't have that sort of other layer. It's almost like you have an additional layer above it. But even then, you look at every institution, whether it's school or business or anything that you go through in life, you've received that idea that there isn't enough and that you're not enough.
So how do you shift the paradigm?
So I think you do by understanding that this way of looking at the world is not accurate. It's only 5,000 years old. The universe is 13.7 billion years old. And there's almost 9, I think it's billion species on the earth right now. And we're the only one who seems to think that this is, you know, a never enough story that we're living. So, and how it started was about 5,000 years ago was with the birth of agriculture and animal husbandry and water irrigation and all of that. And you would think that that would be the birth of having more than enough. In fact, the reality was that there was more than enough. Once we took whatever nature had and we tried to copy it, and we did it really well, and there was abundance. But we didn't see people acting that way. And so I was really curious about how come the onset of abundance was also the onset of a scarcity mindset. That seems like a paradox. And yet when you look at where humanity has been psychologically and in terms of our consciousness, how our consciousness has evolved over time, you know, when we're hunter-gatherers, we are essentially like infants, you know, dependent on the mother for our food and the means of survival. And then you move into childhood, which would be, you start to copy what the parent does. You're able to walk or talk or whatever. And that's very similar to what humanity did when we learned how to, you know, do agriculture. So we were in the childhood phase. Well, then came along adolescence, and adolescence is a time of rebellion. It's a time of me first. It's a time I need it now. Right now, I don't care about the future. I don't care about what others need. You know what I mean? So it's that mindset that came in when abundance came, and what happened was that's when hierarchy started. That's when the human culture that we know now, where there's hierarchy, and there's the rich and the poor, and you know, the privileged and the non-privileged and all of that, that started around that time, because this idea of an adolescence of, ooh, there's more than enough, that means I can get power, and that means that I can distinguish myself from other people. And so that's just an idea. That's not a reality in nature. Like if you look to any other species, that doesn't happen. So I see it as an experiment sort of in the human condition. We've gone through these developmental stages, and we're going from infancy to childhood to adolescence, and what's happening now, which is so exciting to me now, is we feel this adolescent phase of culture kind of crumbling, kind of shaky. There's a lot of people that want change, that are challenging the system. We're finding out a lot of secrets that had been hidden about how that system holds together. And ultimately, that's a really good thing. It's a really positive thing, because it shows that we're moving into the adult phase, which is we're willing to look at the hard realities. We're willing to take responsibility for creating the kind of world we really want. And we really, at an essence level, all want the same thing, which is enough for ourselves, for family, for Mother Earth, for future generations. So knowing that at that essence level we all want the same thing, I really believe we can create it, and we are creating it now. So if you look at many of the movements that are happening all over the planet, it was documented in the book Blessed Unrest, that they don't identify as one single movement, but they do each have at their core this idea that we are enough, and that there is enough to make things happen in a positive way, in a way that benefits everybody. So I'm very hopeful, and I think it boils down to the individual in that if you understand you're part of a flawed story, you stop blaming yourself for that story. And you even stop blaming your parents for the story because they just inherited something that was a 5,000-year-old idea that, that's a long time. It's long enough to forget that anything else could possibly exist, And it's time to take back our story and rejoin nature and understand that when you partner back with nature's enough story, which is billions of years old, you actually gain empowerment, you gain liberation from that old story, you gain happiness, joy, community, all those things by embracing the essence of who you really are, because you really are enough. You've always been enough, you always will be enough. That is the truth of who you are. And so the rest is just a story.
Beautiful, beautiful philosophy. Mm-hmm. So how do you envision your work mm-hmm. and your inspirational words mm-hmm. changing the world?
Well, I think that it's all in the enough message itself. It's almost like a blueprint to how we get free of the old never enough story and move into the enough story. So that's the best way for me to describe that to you. So it always begins with you as an individual. So the first sentence in the enough message is, I am enough. And what that means to me is reclaiming who you really are, that you are enough for what you came here to do, and that any other messages that you get from outside yourself about what enough is are not to be paid attention to. Really, you have to go within and really feel who you are and the unique person that you are. You wouldn't be here on this planet if the universe didn't call for you, didn't need you to be you. And no one else can do that job. No one else can be you. So that's step one, and it's a really important step. If you can't do that, you can't then become part of the paradigm shift, because you bring the old baggage with you, and we can't do that anymore. It's just the old system's falling apart, and if we really want to build the new, we have to liberate ourselves, and then we can help each other. It's that old adage of, putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. So that's the first sentence, I am enough. The second is, I have enough. So that's looking at what you have, the life that you've created, and you may have material abundance or you may not. But chances are there's ways to change your relationship to the things that you do have, or to the ideas of not having enough, to actually redirect your energy, because you are energy. So whether you have a possession or not doesn't matter. It's really about your energy to co-create in this world what you want that is aligned with you and your mission. So I have enough is about doing that. It's about really looking at your circumstances and how do you realign with who you really are. Then there's we. We move to the we now, because you've done your inner work, you've done your outer work of looking at how you are in the world, and then you're ready to partner with other people without doing that comparative thing that we do, like when you go into a new work group or even a social group, you're always like, okay, who's like me, who's not like me, who's better than me, who's smarter than me, who's better looking than me. And all of that keeps us from really truly connecting with each other. So if you are claiming who you are fully, none of that jealousy comes in, those other stories don't come in to muddy your thinking or your energy. And you're totally available and free then to partner with others to create this new world. So then you can go into we have enough, which is when we combine our gifts with other people. And, and we realize that we have more resources than we realize, that we don't necessarily have to rely on the old systems to bring us abundance. So, for example, there's a lot of communities that are doing local currencies, or they're doing cooperatives, or they're doing swapping, or time banks, and things like that. Those are ways of creating, reclaiming our own power to co-create together with other people whose values align with ours. And we're unplugging from the old system. And then there's the next sentence is enough, which is enough with an exclamation point. And I clarify that this isn't enough is enough, because we hear a lot of enough is enough out there. And it's important to have enough is enough, because that really means you had it with the old system. You really are sick of it, you don't want to be part of it, but that still is that duality. See, you're still comparing yourself to someone else. You're saying someone else or something else is not enough. You are, or your group is, and they're not. So that's a different energy that still has the old scarcity in it. And so this enough, which is the crowning sentence of the whole enough message, enough with an exclamation point, is about claiming. It's like standing your ground. This is the world I want, and I'm going to align my life and my choices with a world in which there's enough, not just for me or my family, but for the community, for the earth, for future generations. And I'm really excited about what's happening at Standing Rock right now, because I think, I'm going to get chills even thinking about it, it is totally aligned with this enough message, because it's about protecting the earth, it's about protecting people, so that, the water supply, the air, and future generations. And it's peaceful, and they're protectors, not protesters, So all of that, to me, is a worthy demonstration of what it looks like to be in this enough world, to make that shift.
It's perfect, and it's so wonderful that your approach has a simplicity to it that's so applicable to so many facets of life and being, like you said, and when there's so much chaos and so many challenges in the world, and it's nice to be able to go back to the simplicity of your messages and the reminders, and how that's really can be applicable to everything.
Yeah, thank you. I feel that I can't take credit for it. I have to say that I am a receiver of the enough message, but I think we all are. And the reason why is it's the core issue that we're dealing with as a humanity. It underlies all these other issues that we care about, is our relationship to this word enough. Because every institution that we rely on, our economics, our in business, education, anything that you can name, was created out of this idea that there's not enough. So we can look at racism, we can look at damage to the environment, and behind all of these things, as well as behind suicide, depression, addiction, every affliction that we have as a humanity, I believe the core issue is really our relationship to this word enough. So if we could just do one simple thing to get to the core and do this deep dive, I call it a deep dive into our relationship with the word enough, is simply to notice when this word pops up in your life on a daily basis. And it will. And that's why it's such a great transformer, because it'll show up everywhere, in every realm of what you're doing. And just notice it without judging yourself. Just notice, okay, I noticed that word enough. How am I orienting towards that word? Is my belief system about myself or this situation aligned with never enough or not enough, or is it aligned with enough? And just observe, and don't try to change it or anything like that. But introduce the possibility that, what if I align with enough? What would be different? And so if you can just do that every time you notice, and just say, what would be different if I thought I was enough? What would be different if I thought there was enough? How would I be different? And that, I think that one thing opens up a much greater possibility for what can happen in our lives.
Perfect, perfect message.
Thank you.
And you're a beautiful speaker.
Oh, thanks.
Very eloquent, and you have been doing being a keynote speaker. You had a recent presentation. Where was that? In Massachusetts?
Yeah, so I was at the Natural Living Expo. I did a presentation there. I did a presentation in Los Gatos. There was a retreat there with Gather the Women organization. They decided to theme their whole retreat around the word enough. I've been actually working with that organization to develop some tools, and we're working on a collaborative guidebook that's going to go with this enough book. So it'll be very practical, hands-on, deep dive into this word enough, and this wonderful resource for how to do that and go deeper. We're going to be offering some webinars and things like that in the future. And then I'm going to be the opening keynote. I'm really excited about this for the Women of Wisdom Conference. It's their 25th year, and it's a women's conference that's held in Seattle. And so I'm very excited to be doing that. And another cool thing is I've had a musical artist who developed a whole CD of songs around the book. She read the book and was excited by that, and so that's one of the things.
That is lovely. So many exciting things.
Yeah, a lot of cool things are happening. There's enough.
I'm so excited for you, and I'm so excited for the wisdom and all the beautiful, important messages that you're bringing in that will spread positive vibe.
Thank you, and
around the world.
I want to thank you for doing what your heart is calling you to do, and just thank you for knowing that you're enough to be that person, to bring these messages to other people and serve humanity with all of your gifts that you do. It's really special that you stand up and be who you are and share those gifts, and you're doing it, and it's beautiful, and I want to thank